I'm obsessed with the fear of giving too much away. I have this feeling that when you give too much away, things become closed down. And when I go and see art as a spectator, I think the works that resist closure are the works that I enjoy the most. That's like part of the innate human condition, isn't it? To try and read logic into everything. And when things are illogical, they stay with you longer. So if I told you why it was called read only, I'd have to kill you. The works chosen for the exhibition are quite specific. But it's really important that no one here knows who I am. So, I mean, if I gave you everything, because I'm quite prolific, I guess, and the work makes mad, untangible jumps, it'd probably just make your head explode. I have quite a free practice that's not bound by style or medium, or you don't necessarily say, oh, that looks like a RyanGander work. So it has to be a little bit controlled, because it's a bit like an introduction to my way of working. I try to list the assumptions, and then whatever assumptions are made about making an exhibition or an artwork, to take those assumptions and turn them upside down. So it seemed really obvious to me that here, to have this gigantic space, that the space should not be visible, but that what I would do with it would be close the space and not show the space at all, but in the gesture of having this conveyor belt with these objects, you're given something that's bigger than that space, you're given something that's the world in a way. Yeah, it doesn't really matter how big the space is, does it? Some of the best works don't even exist, they're just people telling a story, or a little bit of paper on the floor, or they don't have to be made of diamonds. They can be made of ideas. It's funny, whenever you go and do a show, you have different bits that you like. I really like the middle room here, because it's this work that I made, I don't know, a decade ago maybe, and I haven't seen it for ages, and it was so enjoyable to make and easy to make and quick to make, and it was so concise and articulate. It's like, poetry, some people say you could get the meaning of a whole book into a poem. That now, in my older days, it just seems so succinct, so squashed, and just perfectly economical, The work's called Man on a Bridge, and it's a 16mm film, and there's 50 takes, and each take's about 10 seconds long. And then I think there's about 15-20 seconds between each take. So it's like that. The kind of black pause between each take is long enough for you to think it's finished, but then it comes back, and every take is exactly the same thing. The character played by an actor, Roger Lloyd Pack, and essentially I just asked him to walk over the bridge and stop halfway and look over the railing into the canal below. So one was a guy who'd lost all his money down the bookies, and he was walking home knowing that he didn't have any money for the rest of the week. And then the next one was a school teacher who was walking home thinking about his children. And then the next one was, I don't know, a businessman who'd been having an affair, and he was like walking away from this affair. And it's funny, he does exactly the same thing, but you can see that there's a totally different character for every walk. I'm more interested in the way that artworks exist without the physical vessel or byproduct or receipt of what they are. I mean, I think really good artworks start in one place but end in like a multitude of places. And really bad artworks usually start in one place and end in one place. really, when you think about all the people that are thinking about them and talking about them at any one moment, that's really their life, and that's really their currency and their value and their worth. It's not always the artworks that you like are the ones that you think about the most afterwards. If I'm still thinking about it a year later or talking about it, even if it annoyed me or I hated it, then possibly that's the good test of a good yardstick of quality in a way. I think I like the idea that people think the work's cheeky. There's something about it that I like cheekiness and I like the humour in it. It's kind of, for me, there's nothing more depressing than it being called conceptual art in a way, because although it's like ideas based, it doesn't remain in the idea. You know, the purpose of it is that it involves humour and it involves like romance and sexuality and sadness and melancholy and all, you know, emotions which stereotypically you don't associate with conceptual art, do you? Someone's probably come up with a word that describes cheeky conceptual art. A lot of people don't like that so much is hidden, because the other thing is, when you hide information from a spectator, it's reminiscent of a kind of elitism, isn't it? Which puts so many people off. When you start to think about exhibition devices, like the way the spectator would approach it, and you start to devise how it exists in the world. You know, I often employ some kind of tactics that increase the approachability, so that someone who doesn't have any training in visual language or art history can come in and access it. And I think humour does that, as does sadness and sexiness and all these other devices. They're like a hook, or they soften that approachability of it. And so you're in the work and you're engaging with it by accident. It's almost like trickery, isn't it? Tricking somebody to engage with it without being put off. What I at least try to do is for it to, be intellectually rigorous, but also to be approachable. And that's a bit of a balancing act. It's quite a hard thing to do, I think. I think there's a lot of stuff in the world, and there's a lot of beautiful things in the world and interesting things in the world, and most art isn't actually making something new, it's just representing things in a different order, or going around the world and highlighting stuff. I mean, you look at kids, and kids build dens. All kids build dens. That's what they do, it's shelter. If you gave 10 children the same toys, identical, and put them in a room and told them to put them on the floor, they'd all do it in a totally different way. And that's creativity. Which is interesting, because if you gave an adult the same things, they'd probably put them in a pile in the corner or line them up in a straight line. And that's what cultural baggage is. That's why children respond better to contemporary art than grown-ups do. And if you ask someone to put something in a gallery, if you say, go and put that in the gallery, they'd go and put it in the gallery, right in the middle of the gallery, because they understand it's an art space. And if you gave it to a DHL guy and said, can you go and put it in that room, he'd put it right by the door. And that's creativity, it's just decision making.